The city of Lagos shimmered beneath the neon glow of a million ambitions. From the top floor of Minecore Technologies, Toby had Dagun stared at the skyline, the empire he built from dust and sleepless nights. At 35, Toby was the youngest billionaire in Africa's tech sector. Every magazine called him the genius who doesn't blink. And truly, he didn't. No emotion, no empathy, just cold calculation. Inside his penthouse, everything was perfect. The chrome furniture, the quiet hum of servers, the faint scent of burnt coffee. He was alone, as always. His phone buzzed, a reminder for the company's 10th anniversary gala. Attend, smile, speak, leave, he muttered, buttoning his black tuxedo. At the gala, cameras flashed like lightning. Mr. Dagun, tell us, what's the secret behind Minecore's success? A reporter asked. Discipline, logic, no distractions, he replied smoothly. Someone whispered from the side, he means no women. The whole chuckled softly. Toby didn't flinch. Years ago, he had believed in love, until Kyoma, the woman he once planned to marry, left him for his business rival on the eve of their wedding. That day, something inside him froze forever. Now, he looked at the world as a contract, predictable, negotiable, and replaceable. When one of his engineers toasted to love and success, Toby interrupted coldly. Love makes weak men poor. Focus makes rich men powerful. But as applause echoed, his chest felt strangely hollow. He looked over the crowd of smiling faces, all pretending, and wondered quietly, is this all there is? Across town, the air smelled of onions and smoke. Inside a small diner named Mama Peace Kitchen, a Morin Wosu, 26, wiped tables with tired hands. Her life couldn't have been more different from Toby's, yet her spirit burned brighter than any chandelier. Amora once dreamed of becoming a lawyer, but when her mother's health collapsed and bills piled up, she dropped out of school to work double shifts at the diner. Each night, she whispered to herself, just one more day, Amora, one more day till things change. That evening, a catering disaster struck the hotel hosting Minecore's gala, and the manager begged Mama Peace for emergency backup. Amora volunteered instantly. I can handle it, she said, tying her apron tighter. They packed steaming jollof rice, fried plantains, and spicy chicken onto trays and hurried to the luxury hall. When Amora entered, her world stopped. Golden chandeliers, guests in designer suits, cameras everywhere. She moved carefully between tables until someone bumped her from behind. A tray tilted, and dark coffee spilled across a man's crisp sleeve. The whole went silent. She froze. Oh my God, I'm so sorry, sir. Toby looked down at her, his black tuxedo stained, his expression unreadable. Everyone waited for the explosion. Instead, he said quietly, You're braver than most people here. She blinked in disbelief. I didn't mean to. He waved it off. Mistakes happen. Carry on. As she left, his eyes followed her, puzzled by the flicker of calm in her apology. He didn't know her name yet, but her voice would echo in his mind all night. 3 days later, Toby's driver pulled over at a small roadside diner for a quick meal. Toby, still on a business call, glanced out the window and froze. There she was again, Amora, in the same apron, serving food to laughing children. A strand of sweat glistened on her forehead. Her smile was warm, real, unfiltered. He ended the call abruptly. Who's that waitress? He asked his driver. Sir? That's Amora. Everyone around here knows her. She's hardworking. Toby didn't know why he cared. Maybe it was the way she made people laugh in a world that always bowed before him. Later that week, during an investor meeting, his personal assistant suddenly resigned. He needed a temporary replacement. His HR manager suggested a short list of candidates. He ignored it. Call that girl from the diner, he said. What girl, sir? The one who spilled coffee on me. When Amora got the call, she thought it was a prank. Minecore Technologies? Assistant to who? To the CEO, the caller replied. She nearly dropped her phone. Are you sure you have a right, Amora? The next morning, she showed up, nervous but determined. In a crisp white blouse and borrowed shoes, she stepped into the glass palace that was Minecore. And there he was again, Toby, standing like a sculpture carved from arrogance and brilliance. He didn't smile. He just said, "Don't be late again. Let's get to work." Two worlds had collided, and neither would leave unchanged. Amora's first week was chaotic. The office was a battlefield of deadlines, arrogance, and whispered gossip. Everyone looked at her like an intruder. "She's the coffee girl," someone muttered. "She won't last a week," another laughed. Toby gave her impossible tasks, organizing data files she didn't understand, preparing presentations she'd never seen before. But she refused to quit. She stayed up late every night, learning, asking questions, and taking notes. One evening, she brought him coffee without being asked. He frowned. "I don't drink coffee at night." "I notice you do when you're stressed," she said softly. "Tonight, you're stressed." For the first time, he was speechless. She left the mug on his desk and walked out. The next morning, he caught her defending the janitor against a senior executive who called him useless. Amora stood her ground. "Every hand that cleans this place helps you look powerful. Respect that." The entire office froze. Toby, watching from the door, felt something stir, admiration, maybe even guilt. That night, she found him asleep at his desk, his face illuminated by the blue light of his laptop. Without thinking, she draped her shawl over his shoulders. When he woke up and saw it, he didn't scold her. He just touched the fabric, confused at the warmth he felt. He'd built his life around control, but Amora was rewriting his code without permission. Days turned into weeks. The distance between them became fragile. Toby started noticing small things, how she hummed old church songs while typing, how she treated the janitors like executives, how she never flinched under pressure. Her kindness irritated him because it made him feel again. One afternoon, during a board meeting, Amora corrected an investor's misquote about their data figures. The room fell silent. Toby looked at her, proud but hiding it behind sarcasm. "Seems you're learning faster than my analysts." She smiled. "I have a good teacher, even if he doesn't know his teaching." Later that day, his ex-fiancée, Kyoma, visited the office. Dressed like royalty, she smirked when she saw Amora outside Toby's door. "So this is a new project," she sneered. "Careful, sweetie. Men like him don't love. They upgrade." Amora said nothing, but her silence cut deeper than any insult. The first rumor arrived like a mosquito in the night. Small, irritating, impossible to ignore. A blurry photo of Toby and Amora leaving the hospital together, his jacket over her shoulders, her face swollen from crying. It hit a gossip blog at dawn, then ricocheted through WhatsApp status updates, Instagram reels, and TikTok stitches by lunchtime. Billionaire CEO and his waitress-turned-assistant. Secret romance. Power imbalance office affair. Who was Amora Nwosu? Everything we know. Inside Minecore, the temperature dropped 5 degrees. People who used to ask Amora for help now avoided her eyes. HR sent her a polite email about optics. The legal team advised Toby to control exposure. His board chair, a hawk in diamond cufflinks, called the scandal a liability to brand perception and market confidence. Toby read the headlines in silence. The part of him that had ruled his life for years, the algorithmic survivor, told him to create distance, restore order, manage risk. But each time he drafted the statement in his head, he saw Amora's hand trembling in the hospital corridor, her cheek pressed to her mother's shoulder. That evening he drove to Mama P's kitchen. It was almost closing time. Amora stood alone, mopping the floor. When she saw him, she straightened, wary. "I'm sorry," he said, the words foreign on his tongue. "For the noise, for the storm." "You didn't cause the storm," she replied quietly. "You're just a lightning rod." "Let me protect you," he said. She smiled, tired and grateful. "I don't need protection. I need space to breathe." He nodded once, stunned by how hard those words landed. In every negotiation, he knew how to keep leverage. With her, leverage felt like a language he didn't want to speak anymore. By morning, the rumor had matured into narrative. A pundit on TV framed it as a morality tale, a rich, calculating Mogul seducing a poor girl with promises. The clip amassed millions of views. The board demanded a decisive boundary. Toby typed a message to Amora. We'll ride this out. Don't bend to shame. He deleted it. He typed again. I'm here. He deleted that too. Instead, he closed his eyes in the office darkness and listened to the hum of servers, the only constant in a life that had never learned to hold softness without breaking it. Minecore's newest product, an AI-driven microlending platform designed for small shops, was 2 weeks from launch when everything began to crack. The cyber team detected unusual activity in the development environment, phantom logins, tick marks in obscure logs, database pings that made no sense. An internal incident channel lit up, possible breach. While the engineers triaged, Toby opened the crisis war room. Whiteboards filled with IP clusters and timelines. Coffee cups multiplied like regrets. Sleep vanished. Every few hours, a new fire, a test user's data exfiltrated, a staging server locked, a sandbox and corrupted. It looked surgical. Someone knew their architecture intimately. The board's patience thinned. Investors asked if the CEO's personal distractions were compromising governance. A regional bank paused their partnership, citing stability concerns. Pride, that old armor, tightened around Toby's chest. He hadn't called Amora in days. Not because he didn't want to, but because he didn't know how to be both vulnerable and in charge. He told himself it was noble to spare her more scandal. The truth was uglier. He'd spent years equating closeness with weakness, and now that closeness asked for courage he wasn't sure he had. At Mama P's kitchen, Amora added a night shift delivering food to warehouses. Her mother's medications were expensive, and the hospital kept revising invoices like shifting sand. Each time she thought she'd caught up, a new cost surfaced. One midnight, Toby showed up at the diner again, suit jacket slung over his shoulder, eyes ringed with exhaustion. He placed a plain envelope on the counter. For the hospital, he said. Don't argue. I don't want your guilt money, she replied, gentle than the word sounded. It's not guilt, he said. It's gratitude. You kept me human when I was trying to become a machine. She hesitated, then pushed the envelope back. Let me fight my life with my own hands, she said. If I ever ask, help me, but don't save me from the climb. He left the envelope anyway, under the napkin dispenser, as if hiding kindness would make it easier to accept. In the war room, the team finally traced a breach, a privileged account from a senior partners group, used at odd hours, masked via a residential proxy network. It smelled like sabotage, and in the background, a chatter of whispers tied to Kyoma's husband's firm sniffing around Minecore's enterprise clients. Toby felt both fury and focus. Pride demanded a crushing counterstrike. But a quiet voice, Amora's, asked for something else, be better than your worst reflex. He tightened the controls, communicated transparently, and bought his people time. Time, it turned out, was about to run out everywhere else. The viral video was 37 seconds long. A paparazzi telephoto caught Toby tucking a shawl around Amora's shoulders outside the hospital. The edit added a slow zoom, a syrupy soundtrack, and captions about forbidden office love. By noon, a radio host laughed. The man who says love is a bug in the human system caught installing it. By evening, a pundit argued power dynamics. By night, another accused Amora of social climbing. She read comments until her heart shrank to a pebble. She shut her phone off. Silence pressed against her skull. HR sent an urgent memo. We recommend a visible separation to protect the company. The board chair called Toby with a script. Affirm your commitment to professionalism. Distance from impropriety. Remove the catalyst. The word catalyst crawled under Toby's skin. He stared at a draft statement he hadn't written. Effective immediately, Ms. Nwosu is dismissed for violating internal protocols. He imagined Amora's face when she read it. He imagined her mother's disappointment. He imagined becoming again the man he hated, calculating, cowardly, safe. He asked for an hour, then another. Finally, the chair said, if you can't do it, I will. Toby pictured the stock price, the launch, hundreds of employees' mortgages. He weighed his soul against the ledger. At 6:13 p.m., a push notification pinged across the tech press. Minecore terminates assistant amid conduct concerns. Amora didn't cry when she saw it. She felt something colder. Clarity. She folded her spare blouse, placed it into her tote, and walked out of the office with her head up. People watched from behind glass like an aquarium exhibit. In the parking lot, Toby waited by his car, face ashen. "I signed it to protect you," he blurted, hating the sound of his own voice. The narrative was becoming. "About me," she finished, steady. "It was always about you." He stepped forward. "Amora." "You don't have to explain the math," she said. "I know how you count. I hope it bought you peace." "It bought me time," he said, voice cracking. "For the company. For the man who still doesn't know how to choose a person when it costs him something," she said, not unkindly. He reached for her hand and stopped, letting it fall. She got into the bus that wheezed up to the curb, the door folding shut with clank. Through the scratched window, their eyes met for 3 seconds, long enough to carve a fault line across the life he'd built. The bus pulled away. Power stayed. Love left. Damage control complete. The launch collapsed like a stage set in a windstorm. A bank withdrew at the last minute. 2 Enterprise pilots paused pending security reviews. The story became simple and devastating. Minecore is unstable. Toby went home to the penthouse and found it too quiet to bear. He sat in the dark until the city lights blurred. He didn't drink. He didn't sleep. He didn't call anyone. He thought, instead, about a shawl on his shoulders and hands that smelled like dish soap and cinnamon. At dawn, his phone vibrated with a message from an unknown number. "We lost her at 4:19 a.m. peacefully." It was a matron from the ward. Amora's mother was gone. The world narrowed to a single point of pain. He dressed without thinking and drove to the small church near the hospital. The air smelled of rain and lilies. Amora sat in the front pew, a scarf tied simply, her eyes a dry, endless distance. People filtered in and out, pressing her hands, whispering scripture, leaving brown envelopes. Toby stayed at the back like a criminal with no right to enter the room. When the service ended, he waited by the steps. She saw him and paused. "I'm sorry," he said, and meant it like a prayer. "Sorry doesn't bring people back," she replied softly. "But thank you for saying it." "Let me help with the arrangements," he said. She shook her head. "No, this part is mine to carry." He swallowed. "Will you?" He stopped. What did he have the right to ask? She saved him. Grief is a furnace, Toby. It burns away what doesn't matter. I learned something today. She looked at the sky, at a bruise of clouds. I learned that love always costs, but it's the only thing we get to keep. He wanted to say, "Then let me pay the cost." He wanted to fall to his knees on the church steps and beg forgiveness for being half a man. Instead, he said nothing and watched her walk to the hearse. In the days that followed, he signed restructuring docs with a steady hand and a hollow chest. He increased the incident disclosure, opened bounties, rebuilt trust. Investors were reassured by his discipline. Employees appreciated his clarity. The market stabilized. Inside him, something had bled out and didn't return. Amora returned to work at the diner in the afternoons and taught neighborhood kids in the evenings, basic coding on shared laptops, logic through games, hope through patience. She wore grief like a second skin and moved gently through it. One night she opened the napkin dispenser and found the envelope he'd left weeks ago, still there. She didn't touch it. She left it for the next person who might need a miracle more than she did. 3 months later, the tech charity summit convened at Eco Hotel. The theme, Technology with a Soul. Toby was slated to give a keynote on cybersecurity readiness. He read the topic line and laughed once, without humor. He stood backstage in a navy suit that suddenly felt too tight. The MC's voice rolled through the hall. The crowd buzzed. Cameras waited. He could stick to script and everyone would clap politely. He could play the chess moves of reputation. Or he could do the thing he had never done in public, be a person before a CEO. When he walked on stage, he didn't open his slides. He closed the clicker in his palm and looked at 1,000 expectant faces. "My name is Tobichukwu Degun," he said, voice steady. "I built a company by trusting code and doubting people. It worked until it broke the part of me that mattered." A rustle moved through the hall. I made choices to protect a brand while harming a human being. I fired someone publicly to quiet a storm. I told myself it was noble. It was cowardice. He swallowed. If she is watching, I am sorry. I am also grateful. She reminded me that leadership without humanity is just management with better lighting. He spoke briefly about the breach and the fixes, about transparency and accountability. Then he ended with a sentence that surprised even him. Power is only useful when it lifts someone else. The clip traveled faster than any product demo he'd ever launched. Commentators argued motives. Cynics saw strategy. Employees felt the room tilt towards something softer. A blog asked, "Who is the woman behind the confession?" People posted theories. None of them found her. Amora didn't watch the speech live. She was in a classroom at a community center, teaching a 12-year-old how to debug a stubborn loop. When she finally saw the clip that night, she didn't cry. She did something rarer. She believed him, not because of the words, but because he had finally put them where it cost him, on a stage, under lights, without a hedge. The next morning, her small initiative received an email from an anonymous foundation. A microgrant application had been approved. Funds earmarked for laptops, internet, and a part-time coordinator. The signature was a legal show with no names. She stared at the approval letter, then at the kids pouring through the door, noisy and hungry and brilliant. "Okay," she whispered to the air, to the woman she had lost, to the man she didn't know how to forgive and couldn't quite forget. "Let's build something that doesn't need a stage to be true." And somewhere across the city, in a quiet office filled with a hum of servers, a man closed his eyes and let the apologies settle, not as a PR win, not as a trade, but as a first, trembling brick in the bridge back to himself. 6 months had passed since the apology. Mindcore had stabilized, and the scandal was now old gossip replaced by newer ones. Toby had learned to live with silence, no lavish parties, no camera interviews, just Welk, Jim, and the low hum of self-reflection. But one morning, while reviewing grant proposals from small nonprofits applying for Mindcore's New Tech for All initiative, his assistant slid a folder across the table. "So, there's one here you might want to see. They help underprivileged kids learn coding." He opened the file and froze. Amora Nwosu, founder, Heart Code Initiative. Attached was a single photo, Amora, surrounded by Bayford children, holding a broken laptop like it was gold. The caption read, "Teaching Hope Through Code." He leaned back, breath shallow. "Set up a meeting," he said. When Amora arrived 2 weeks later, she looked different, confident, radiant, but still humble. Her hair was braided simply, her blouse faded from washing, but her presence filled the boardroom like morning light. "Mr. DeGun," she said formally. "Toby," he corrected softly. She nodded, expression neutral. "I appreciate the opportunity to pitch." She spoke passionately, not about charity, but empowerment. "The kids in Adjagunal don't need pity," she said. "They need access. Give them tools, and they'll build the future." The board members clapped. Toby didn't. He was too busy trying to swallow the lump in his throat. After the meeting, he walked her out. "You've done well, Amora." "I did what I had to do," she replied. "Pain teaches you how to build things that last." "I'm sorry again," he said. "I forgave you long ago," she replied, turning toward the elevator. "But forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting." That night, he approved her grant personally, not out of guilt, but admiration. She hadn't just survived, she'd evolved. And for the first time in years, Toby realized redemption isn't a headline. It's a quiet yes whispered when nobody's watching. 2 months later, Mindcore launched a community partnership, pairing tech experts with grassroots educators. Toby invited Amora's program to lead one of the pilot projects. At first, she declined. "I don't want to be your PR redemption story," she said bluntly. "You're not," he said. "You're the story that proves technology means nothing without heart." She hesitated, then agreed on one condition: no cameras, no interviews, just work. The partnership began awkwardly. Toby arrived at the dusty community center in designer loafers, watching kids cluster around broken desktops. Amora rolled up her sleeves, laughing with them as she taught binary through music, tapping rhythms on the desk, 1 to 0, 0 to 1. He watched, humbled. The children didn't care about wealth or scandal. They cared about who stayed long enough to help them debug their dreams. That night, Toby joined a fasuya and malt at a roadside stall. The world had once seen him only in black-tied dinners. Now, he sat on a wooden bench beside a woman who made poverty feel powerful. "You built an empire," she said, "but now you're learning to build people." He smiled faintly. "And you built hope without a dime to start." For a moment, silence hung between them, warm and full. When he offered to partner with her foundation formally, she shook her head. "You can't own what's meant to be shared," she said. "Let's collaborate, not merge." He nodded, humbled. For once, he wasn't the boss. He was a student. By the end of the project's first phase, over 300 children had learned basic coding. Their photo went viral online, not because of Toby's name, but because of their smiles. And quietly, people began to whisper again, not scandal, but respect. The success drew attention and envy. At a tech conference, Toby and Amara were invited as keynote speakers. Photos of them sharing a stage flooded social media, and one reached Kyoma, Toby's ex-fiancée. Kyoma's company, once thriving, was now bleeding money. Seeing Toby's rebirth irritated her more than she could admit. "So the mighty robot found a soul," she scoffed to her assistant. "Let's see how long that lasts." Weeks later, an anonymous blog post appeared. The true face of Amara Nwosu, the waitress who manipulated a billionaire. It included partial hospital records, twisted timelines, and false claims that she used pity to climb. The post went viral. When Amara saw it, she laughed bitterly. "They're late," she told Toby when he called. "The old me already died. This one doesn't scare easily." But the post caused donors to freeze. Some parents withdrew their kids from the program. The foundation's funds dried up overnight. Toby went on live TV that evening, unplanned. "The post is false," he said calmly. "And even if it weren't, this woman has done more for humanity than most of us combined. She turned pain into purpose, something I'm still learning." Kyoma watched the broadcast, furious. Her attempt had backfired spectacularly. Public sentiment swung in Amara's favor. Donations flooded back. But for Toby, it wasn't about image anymore. When he saw her later that week, he said simply, "I won't let anyone rewrite your story." She smiled softly. "Then write yours beside mine, not over it." That night, for the first time since everything began, they shared a quiet hug that said more than any confession ever could. Toby thought the past was finally behind him, until the past knocked on his office door. It was his father, older now, frail, holding a walking stick. The man who had left him and his mother decades ago after their family business collapsed. Toby froze. "Why are you here?" "I saw your speech," his father said. "The one about humanity. I wanted to say I'm proud of you." Old anger surged. "You don't get to be proud. You disappeared when things got hard." His father sighed. "I know. I ran because failure felt heavier than shame. You got your strength from your mother." "Don't use her to soften me," Toby snapped. Amora arrived midway through the confrontation, dropping off documents. Seeing the tension, she excused herself, but the old man stopped her. "You must be Amora," he said. "You gave my son back his heart." She smiled politely. He already had it. He just forgot where he kept it. That night, Toby sat in silence, staring at the city. When Amora called to check in, he confessed everything. "I thought success would erase him," he said. "But it only made me more like him, running from emotion." "Then stop running," she said. "Forgive him. Not for him, for yourself." The next morning, Toby visited his father again. He didn't speak for long, just said, "I forgive you." The old man wept, relief washing decades of guilt away. When Toby told Amara later, she smiled. "Love isn't about being perfect," she said. "It's about healing what's broken." And for the first time, Toby truly understood. Forgiveness wasn't weakness. It was freedom. The following year, Toby launched a new app under Mindcore, Heartcode, a free platform connecting young developers with mentors and community projects. The first demo event drew hundreds of students, including many from Amora's program. She was the keynote speaker. Standing under bright stage lights, she began. Once upon a time, someone told me love was a weakness. Now I teach kids that love is the first code we all learn, because without compassion, innovation dies. The audience erupted in applause. Toby watched from the front row, eyes glistening. When she stepped down, he took her hand before the cameras and said, "You didn't just change my company, Amora. You changed me." Later that night, as they stood by the lagoon, Lagos lights reflecting like stars on water, Toby whispered, "You make me want to build forever." Amora smiled. "Then let's build something that doesn't need money to survive, only love and purpose." He kissed her forehead, gentle, grateful, and finally whole. A full year had passed since that first clumsy gala spill that brought two worlds together. Mindcore and Heartcode had grown side by side, technology and humanity finally walking hand in hand. Toby had become a man the media barely recognized, humble, patient, and deeply in love. But no one expected what he was planning. The night of Mindcore's 11th anniversary gala arrived. The same golden chandeliers glowed, the same cameras flashed. Yet this time, there was a softness in the air. The billionaire who once said love makes men weak was about to do something utterly human. When the crowd settled, Toby stepped up to the stage. "Tonight isn't about profits," he began, voice steady. "It's about gratitude for the people who rebuild us when we break." Then he turned toward the crowd. Amora stood near the exit, dressed simply in a blue gown. He extended his hand toward her. "Amora Nwosu," he said, "you taught me that love isn't a distraction. It's a code that fixes everything. You once told me you wanted a love that builds, not just burns. Let's build together, for life." Gasps filled the hall as Toby went down on one knee. Reporters raised cameras. Executives whispered. Amora's hands trembled. "Toby," she whispered, overwhelmed. "You don't have to." "I want to," he said. "Not because I owe you, but because I finally learned how to love without fear." Tears shimmered in her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Let's build." The hall erupted. Flashbulbs exploded. But amid the chaos, they held each other, two souls who'd found peace after storms. Across the city, headlines screamed. From Waitress to Fiancé, the love story that reprogrammed a billionaire. But Amora didn't care for the headline. As she whispered in his ear that night, "This isn't your redemption story. It's ours." Their engagement became the talk of the continent. While gossip blogs chased a fairy tale, Toby and Amora focused on work. They founded the Amora Foundation for Tech and Hope, dedicated to giving young African girls access to STEM education. Amora insisted on running the foundation herself. "I'm not a trophy," she told him. "I'm a partner." He grinned. "That's the only kind I want." They spent mornings visiting schools in remote towns, evenings brainstorming at Mindcore's office. Toby had learned to take criticism, and Amora to delegate power. Their partnership was imperfect but beautiful, a balance of brains and heart. But success invited shadows. Some old investors began murmuring, "She's too visible." Others doubted her leadership. "She's emotional, not corporate." During one press conference, a journalist asked bluntly, "Do you think your foundation is just another PR stunt?" Amora smiled gracefully. "If changing lives is a stunt, then I hope every rich man start one." The audience clapped, and Toby watched her with pride. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was leading. At night, as they walked hand in hand along the marina, he whispered, "You know you become everything I used to mock, and everything I now admire." She laughed, "And you become what I used to pray for, a man who listens." Just when everything seemed stable, betrayal returned, not from enemies, but from within. One of Mindcore's senior partners, Mr. Follerin, secretly resented Amora's growing influence. He'd been quietly siphoning funds meant for the foundation, covering it up with forged expense reports. But when a journalist uncovered irregularities, the blame landed squarely on Amora. Within hours, social media was flooded. Amora Nwosu accused of misusing charity funds. Hot coat scandal. Was it all a lie? Toby's phone rang nonstop. Board members demanded a statement. He wanted to believe her immediately, but the old ghost whispered, "Don't be a fool again." When he confronted her, his voice was colder than he meant. "They're saying you forged receipts." Amora's eyes filled with hurt. "Do you think I would do that?" "I don't know what to think," he admitted. Her silence was worse than shouting. "Then maybe you never really knew me," she said quietly, and walked out. For days, the distance between them grew unbearable. She refused his calls. He buried himself in meetings, trying to untangle the accounts. When the truth finally emerged, that Folarin had manipulated the books to cover his own embezzlement, Toby felt sick. Amora didn't wait for him to apologize. She showed up at Minecore's board meeting uninvited, carrying proof, bank statements, timestamps, and an internal audit. In front of everyone, she exposed Folarin's fraud. When he tried to deny it, she played the security footage of him entering restricted areas after hours. By the time it ended, he was fired on the spot. Then, in a moment of raw courage, Toby stood up before the entire board. "I owe this woman a public apology," he said. "I doubted her when I should have stood by her. From now on, Amora isn't just my partner in life. She's my equal in leadership." The room erupted in applause. Tears ran down Amora's face, not from triumph, but release. And for the first time, Toby understood, real love isn't proven by romance. It's proven by respect. The wedding wasn't the lavish affair people expected. No palaces, no celebrity guests, just a garden outside the city, under a gray sky heavy with rain. As the ceremony began, thunder rolled softly like drums of blessing. Toby wore a simple cream agbada, Amora, a lace gown stitched by local women from her foundation. When the first drop began to fall, someone suggested moving indoors. Amora shook her head. "Let it rain," she said. "Rain reminds us that growth only happens after storms." And so, under the Lagos rain, they said their vows. "I used to think power was control," Toby said, voice trembling. "But love taught me power is service." Amora smiled. "And I used to think strength was independence. But love taught me strength is choosing someone who helps you rise." They sealed it with a kiss, rain cascading down their faces, the guests cheering wildly. That moment became iconic online. The rain kiss, when love wasn't afraid to get wet. But for Toby and Amora, it wasn't a performance. It was a prophecy, two people reborn under cleansing skies. 5 years later, the once-feared tech mogul had become a different kind of legend. Toby and Amora now co-led Heartcode Africa, a sprawling initiative transforming lives across the continent. Free education, mentorship programs, startup incubators in slums. They weren't perfect. They argued about budgets, schedules, and priorities. But every disagreement ended with laughter, and every failure became a lesson. One Saturday morning, they visited the old Mama Peace kitchen, now renovated, repainted, and bustling with young trainees learning coding upstairs. The sign above the door read, "Heart and Code Café, where hope is served." Amora smiled at the familiar smell of fried plantain. "Remember when I spilled coffee on you here?" she teased. Toby chuckled. "And I thought I'd met an inconvenience. Turns out I met my destiny." A group of kids ran up shouting, "Uncle Toby, Auntie Amora." They hugged them, tugging at their clothes, showing them tablets filled with code projects. Toby looked at Amora, radiant, fulfilled, unstoppable. "You changed my world," he said softly. She smiled. "No, Toby, we changed each other." That evening, a documentary crew interviewed them for a feature titled "The Man Who Thought He Couldn't Love." When asked what he'd tell his younger self, Toby paused, then said, "Don't fear love. Fear living without it." As the sun set over Lagos Lagoon, Toby and Amora walked hand in hand into the glow, two souls once broken by pride, now rebuilt by grace. Their story had started with a spilled coffee and ended as proof that even the coldest hearts can learn to love again.